What do you do when would-be leaders joke about genocide and praise Hitler, then claim the chat was doctored? Tonight, Maya grounds the harm and history. Leo picks apart sourcing and process. I'm Ethan. Let's untangle the outrage, the evidence, and what it means for power. Tonight, the clash is stark, an official cascade of condemnations and resignations, and a public fight over whether a leak of ugly private messages is a smoking gun or a political hit job.
Look, when people in the pipeline of power joke about gas chambers and call rape epic, that's not private immaturity, that's ideology and training, practiced in the shadows until it surfaces.
Hold on. It is revolting, yes. But when leaks come with claims of extortion and editing, we should ask how the sausage got made before we torch everyone's career.
Here are the verified basics. Politico obtained roughly 2,900 pages of Telegram messages from January to mid-August. About a dozen young Republican leaders across states appear in the logs. The language is repeatedly racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic, and violent. Slurs, praise for Nazis, references like "I love Hitler," jokes about gas chambers, even messages celebrating rape as epic.
And the quotes are specific. Peter Junta, everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. Joe Maligno, can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. Annie K. Katie, I'm ready to watch people burn now.
There's more. A white supremacist code, 1488, tossed around, slurs layered in, and one message degrading an Indian woman. Ugly is an understatement.
Names in the logs include Peter Junta, Joseph Maligno, William Hendricks, Bobby Walker, Alex Dwyer, Luke Moseman, Annie K. Katie, and Samuel and Brianna Douglas. Michael Bartels appears as a minimal participant.
Minimal or not, a federal lawyer in the room while colleagues toss out "I love Hitler" and gas chamber jokes, and no pushback? Silence is a choice when hate is roaring.
Or silence is a legal instinct. Do not engage in a dodgy chat. I am not applauding it, but the distinction matters between speaking filth and being in proximity to filth.
Institutional reactions were swift. The Young Republican National Federation called the language vile and demanded involved members resign from state and local roles immediately. Within days, at least 4 people saw job changes. Peter Junta's tenure as a New York Assembly Chief of Staff ended. Joseph Maligno left the state court system. William Hendricks left the Kansas AG's office. Bobby Walker stepped off a campaign plan.
Consequences arrived fast, maybe too fast in some cases. Accountability, yes. But we also need due process when logs might be incomplete or contested.
Spare me. Those lines were not ambiguous. Expecting the Jew to be honest. I love Hitler. Epic to rape. These are not policy disputes. They are moral failures with power attached.
Prominent Republicans condemned the chat. New Yorkers Elise Stefanik and Mike Lawler called for resignations. Vermont Governor Phil Scott urged Senator Sam Douglas to resign. Legislative leaders joined in.
Good. That is what leaders should do. Call it out. Cut ties. Show that this is not the brand. The movement has to police its own, or it becomes what the worst actors say it is.
But the policing happens after exposure, not before. That is the culture. They felt safe joking about genocide for months. The risk calculus changed only when they got caught.
Several people apologized while contesting the release. Peter Junta called it a coordinated character assassination, claimed extortion, and said he could not verify accuracy. Bobby Walker apologized, but alleged manipulation or missing context.
Those claims should be examined. If extortion was used to source logs, that taints the process. Not the content, necessarily, but the method. Both can be true, vile content and a dirty reveal.
And both can be a pattern. As another commentator noted, this is not a few randos. There is a state senator, public staffers, and party officers. This is a pipeline, not a prank.
Public discourse split. Some Republicans demanded full accountability. Others pushed back on the outrage. Vice President J.D. Vance compared it with a college group chat and refused what he called pearl clutching over political violence rhetoric.
That minimization lit a fire. Progressive voices argued these authors are not students, they are staffers and an elected state senator. When you normalize gas chambers, you train your bench to wield cruelty.
Or you argue for proportionality. A college text scandal is bad. This is worse. But we do not need to turn every condemnable chat into a party-wide indictment. Call names, not tribes.
Except we saw the tribe dynamics. As one panel put it, these are future operatives, not campus trolls, the slur count, the Hitler praise, the gas chamber joke. This is the clubhouse talk of rising staffers.
That same panel also noted an internal feud. Power struggles often drive leaks. If a rival faction weaponized chat logs, we should keep our eye on both stories, the rot and the knife fight.
To recap the facts before we go deeper, the logs span more than 7 months, include dozens of vile entries, triggered personnel fallout and resignation calls across states, and sparked a national debate on tolerance for bigotry among aspiring leaders.
And we should name the harm. When messages say rape Hayden, when women are demeaned, when black people are monkeys, these are invitations to violence. Language conditions action.
Language matters, agreed, but law and fairness matter too. Who wrote which lines? Who lurked? Who objected? If we flatten it all, we collapse moral gradations that justice depends on.
Unresolved questions remain. Some participants insist the logs were doctored or sourced via extortion. Reporters reviewed the records as part of a broader probe, but not every outlet has independently verified every message.
Verification takes time, but look at the immediate pattern. Multiple jobs lost, party leaders demanding resignations, and scarce outright denials of authorship on the worst lines. That says something about credibility.
It also says lawyers are cautious. People apologize without conceding key facts to avoid defamation traps. Again, investigate thoroughly. Sunlight first, verdict second.
Context side note, the probe also reviewed alleged financial issues in the New York Young Republicans chapter. Records show more than $38,000 in debt, not decisive to the rhetoric, but part of the governance picture.
Bad books, bad jokes, bad judgment, a trifecta. If you cannot balance a ledger or a group chat, do not ask for public trust. The right should raise its standards, not lower the bar to ground level.
This is broader than standards. As one discussion argued, everything is downstream from the top. When leaders indulge cruelty, the interns carry it like scripture. The pipeline learns that hate is a ladder.
I buy that leadership shapes tone. I also know movements are not monoliths. Plenty of conservatives despise this stuff. Let us separate the weeds from the field, then burn the weeds at the root.
Public reaction ranged widely. A primetime host blasted the "I love Hitler" chat framing and focused on a federal lawyer who, according to the reporting, offered no pushback in the thread and kept his job. That became a symbol of tolerance for hate.
And that framing feeds outrage, but blurs nuance. Minimal participant does not equal mastermind. Condemn the silence, sure, but do not invent complicity beyond the record.
Nuance cannot hide the trend. Another commentator flagged a youth faction linked to far-right influencers, open to Hitler fanaticism, normalized as edgy. The chat reads like a syllabus for that worldview.
Yet another panel noted the internal war, rival young Republican factions, a possible threat to spill the chat, affidavits flying. It is toxic politics meets toxic culture, hard to untangle which poisons which.
Let's parse the evidence gaps. What is verified? The scope of messages, the content cited, the named participants, the immediate personnel fallout, the public calls for resignation. What is in dispute? Sourcing, completeness, and manipulation claims.
And the ethical floor. Even if a log was trimmed, you cannot edit someone into saying gas chamber jokes. At best, the dispute nudges edges, not the core of cruelty on display.
Agreed on the core. Still, process matters because it sets precedent. If extortion becomes a standard source method, today's villains become tomorrow's targets, guilty or not.
Beyond process, the question is impact. Do these revelations change how parties recruit and vet? Do donors and lawmakers draw lines that stick? Or is this another outrage cycle that fades by next news week?
Real change is structural, transparent vetting, codes of conduct with teeth, training that pairs speech with consequence, and bans on racist and anti-Semitic actors in leadership pipelines, not performative statements, policies.
Add personal responsibility. If you typed it, own it. Apologies without "but the leak" are the minimum. Then show growth. Step back, learn, mentor differently, and come back only if you have receipts of change.
We should also talk about how jokes become norms. The logs show cruelty treated as bonding. Jokes about rape and genocide are not edge. They are rehearsal for dehumanization in policy and practice.
And yet humor can be reclaimed. Movements need counterculture that mocks bigotry, not victims. Shame works. Ostracize the edgelords. Make the hateful unhireable in politics.
Shame is step one, power is the lever. If donors, electeds, and national committees freeze out the offenders and the apologists, the message travels faster than any press release.
Let's examine leadership responses. Some leaders condemned and demanded resignations. Others urged perspective or deflection. The result is a muddled signal to the next generation about what is truly disqualifying.
Clear rule. Racist and genocidal rhetoric is disqualifying. Period. Nuance belongs in investigations, not in the moral bright line. You can say that and still ask how the leak happened.
And no more dating the response. Leaders must not wait for headlines. If your young bench is marinating in hate, you knew before Politico did. Cut it off upstream, not after the spill.
There is also the question of scope. Are we looking at one faction or a wider tolerance? Turning that into data means audits, reporting mechanisms, and consequences beyond a news cycle.
Create a standard. If you seek party office or public employment, you consent to background checks on public and semi-public chatter. Cross the line, lose the post. That is fair warning, not censorship.
Pair that with culture change. If the cool kids say sex is gay and rape is epic, you do not tweak hiring. You intervene in the social incentives that reward cruelty as status.
Flip the incentive. Valorize service and decency. Make caring for constituents cooler than dunking on the vulnerable. Politics is theater. Cast better heroes.
On the verification front, we will watch for independent reviews of the logs and clarity on the sourcing claims. If law enforcement or internal committees probe the alleged extortion, that is part of the story too.
Meanwhile, the harms are present tense. Jewish listeners hearing gas chamber jokes from would be officials. Black listeners hearing monkeys, survivors hearing rape cheered. You cannot unhear that.
Which is why the right answer is not to shrug. It is to say, not in my party, not in my office, not in my campaign. Then live it when no one is watching, and when the group chat pings at midnight.
Before we close, one more recap. Verified logs show a months-long pattern of bigoted, violent rhetoric among some young GOP figures. Resignations and firings followed. Top leaders across ideologies condemned. Disputes persist over sourcing and scope.
And the takeaway is not just outrage. It is a mandate. Build institutions that spot rot early, refuse to launder it as locker room talk, and replace it with a politics that protects people over power.
Also, remember mercy for those who change. Fire the unrepentant. But if someone shows real contrition, education, and repair, leave a door cracked for redemption. That is how cultures get better.
Next, we will track whether resignations continue, whether independent verification lands, and whether parties build new fences around their pipelines. Because the question is bigger than a chat. Who is being trained to lead, and how?